What's up, family? Welcome to Executive Orders Watch, where we break down the power, the policy, and the presidential purpose, uncut and for the people. I'm your host, E. Millions Williams, and tonight, we're not just recapping history, we're writing it in real time. Because democracy ain't just on the ballot anymore, it's on the operating table. And one man showed up with the tools, the courage, proven experience, and the clarity to have led us to a more unified nation. Before we hand him the mic, let's be clear about what this moment really means. President Joe Biden didn't just inherit a fractured government. He challenged it, rebuilt it, reimagined it. While others talked about accountability, he dropped the executive pen and made it reality. Let's break down what leadership looks like when it's got backbone. No immunity for presidential crimes. Biden's backing a constitutional amendment that shuts the door on presidential privilege. If you broke the law while in office, you get indicted, tried, and sentenced, just like everybody else. Power doesn't mean protection from justice. Term limits for Supreme Court justices. No more lifetime thrones and robes. Biden's plan, 18-year terms, with a new appointment every 2 years. It's about rotation, representation, restoration. A bench that serves the people, not politics. A binding code of conduct. Real ethics, not empty tradition. This president's calling for enforceable rules. Full transparency on gifts, mandatory recusals for conflicts, and zero tolerance for judicial campaigning. Because even robes need rules. That, my people, is what it means to use presidential power for the people. Cue applause. Camera zooms on President Biden stepping up. But before we hear from the commander in reform, do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you're ready to break down barriers and build up democracy, roll with us at emillions.org. The coalition's growing. The movement is real. Because around here, we don't just vote for democracy, we live for it. We die for it. This is E. Millions Williams, and you're watching EOW. Stay bold, stay loud, stay free.
All right, everyone, let's settle in. This is important. I appreciate you both coming here today to make your case about the future of Washington, D.C. We all know D.C. isn't just a patch of land. It's home to over 700,000 Americans, folks who pay taxes, serve in the military, and raise their families here. But they don't have full voting representation in Congress. That's not some small technicality. That's a big question about what democracy means. You go ahead first. State your claim for why you believe D.C. should finally become our 51st state. Thank you. You've laid out your position clearly. Now I want to hear the argument against statehood. Please, state your claim so we can figure out if it's best for the country or not. I appreciate both of you. This is exactly what a healthy democracy looks like. People with different viewpoints coming together to hash things out in good faith. Hey, E-Millions, I know you're tuning in right now. For democracy, I live for, and for democracy, I die for. Now, folks watching at home, we're going to roll a short video after this clip to help everyone understand what's at stake here. Why this debate matters to every American, whether you live in D.C. or anywhere else in this country. Let's keep talking, let's keep listening, and let's make sure we do what's right by the people.
Presidents certainly feel like we're closer than ever. It's very important to have equal federal representation in our government. But what made it really clear to us this year was that we need the self-determination rights that come from being a state. So as much as statehood is about having a voting senator or a voting member of the House, a governor is also very important. You know, in the coronavirus crisis, we all saw how governors had to step up and lead last year. And just getting our mayor on the calls to coordinate with those governors was a challenge because her title is mayor and not governor. The events of January 6th made clear that not having a governor who could call out the National Guard in times of a real emergency also jeopardizes the health and safety of DC residents. The state of Washington, DC is going to look pretty much the same. It's going to feel pretty much the same, but it will be freer. It will be fairer. And America will have more of its fellow citizens participating equally.
The District of Columbia, as it currently exists, would be reduced by this bill to a tiny enclave around the National Mall. And then the rest of the current district would be turned into this new 51st state. There are problems with that, the main problem being that the Constitution, as I read it and many others read it and have read it for a long time, does not permit that. The so-called enclave clause of the Constitution. And it was a single act that was completed at that point in time. Now, for Congress to change things at this point in time would require a constitutional amendment. You've got to recognize that the Constitution gives Congress only limited enumerated powers.
If offered, I will vote to return residential portions of D.C. to Maryland, thus giving D.C. citizens the power to vote.
Over time, the proposal has been made to retrocede the district, or most of the district, into the state of Maryland. But of course, that is not going to accomplish what the proponents want. The proponents want 2 more senators. And let's be candid, they want 2 more Democratic senators because the district is overwhelmingly Democratic.
What do you think about the capital becoming a state? It's something a lot of folks have been debating for generations, whether the people of Washington, D.C. should finally have full representation, just like every other American. You know what? Let's use the Dragon Balls to go check it out ourselves. Go all the way back to the birth of this nation and see how it all started. What do you think about the capital becoming a state? It's a question that's been hanging over our democracy for a long, long time. All right, let's do this. Eternal Dragon, by your name, I summon you. This is going to be fun. We're about to see the birth of this nation with our own eyes. The feeling of being here in D.C. before the White House is even built, it's hard to describe. It's like standing inside an idea before it became real, before the marble columns, the West Wing, all of it, just open fields, plans on parchment, and the hope this place would hold the whole experiment together. Well, folks, here I am, standing in the past, right on the spot where the White House will rise one day. It's something to think about, isn't it? You build a house so grand it'll come to symbolize the presidency itself, but you never actually get to live in it. That's exactly what happened to George Washington. He commissioned the design, laid the groundwork, literally, but he passed the torch before the first brick was laid in place. This city, Washington, D.C., it was carved out of Virginia and Maryland, a federal district, not a state. Back then, it was a bold idea to plant the seat of government in neutral territory so no state held special sway over the Union. But here's the thing. More than 2 centuries later, the people who call D.C. home are still fighting to have their voices fully counted, still fighting for statehood and the representation they deserve. All right, let's see if I can find George. I've got a few questions for him, and maybe a few answers too.
Hello, Joe. It is a true pleasure to see you here, my friend. I must say, I am proud of you for standing as a beacon of light during some of America's hardest times. Through the darkness of the COVID pandemic, amid waves of misinformation, and in moments when the nation wavered in trust and truth, you stood firm. That takes courage, the kind I know all too well. To all Americans, permit me to introduce myself. I am George Washington, born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia. I lived a life guided by service to this land, passing from it on December 14, 1799, at Mount Vernon, my home along the Potomac. My youth was forged in the untamed woods of the frontier, where I learned the value of perseverance as a land surveyor. I found early command during the French and Indian War, where I faced both triumph and failure, and where I learned that humility in leadership is not weakness, but strength. Those early years taught me that the fate of a free people is never guaranteed, and that leadership requires sacrifice. But it was during the great struggle for liberty, the American Revolution, that my purpose was tested. As Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, I led a ragtag force against the greatest military power in the world. We crossed icy rivers under cover of night, endured hunger at Valley Forge, and persevered to final victory at Yorktown. I did not fight for power. I fought for a principle, that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people might endure. And so, when peace was won, I laid down my sword. I returned to Mount Vernon, believing my service complete. But the people called once more, and I answered, not for glory, but for duty. I was honored to be unanimously elected as the first president of the United States twice. But being first meant there was no path laid out for me. I had to carve that road myself, with every decision, every letter, every law I signed or vetoed. And though the term executive order had not yet been coined, the power of the executive branch was shaped by my hand. Let me tell you what I did, not for legacy, but to preserve the fragile unity of our new republic. In 1789, I called for a national day of thanksgiving, a proclamation not merely of thanks, but of unity. I believed that if our citizens paused together to express gratitude, perhaps they could also grow together as one people. In 1793, the European powers were again at war. France wished us to join their cause, but we were not yet ready to bleed again. I issued the Neutrality Proclamation, asserting that the United States would not be entangled in foreign wars. This was not weakness. It was wisdom, a defense of our young nation's sovereignty and survival. When rebellion stirred in our own land, the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794, I issued military orders and led federal troops personally to quell the insurrection. Some say it was harsh, but I knew if our Constitution was to have meaning, our laws must be upheld. Otherwise, we were not a nation. We were a suggestion. I also oversaw the design and placement of our capital city. The District of Columbia, carved from Maryland and Virginia, was envisioned as neutral ground for all states. Though I never lived in the White House, I helped chart the land it now stands on. I declined. I stepped down after 2 terms, not because I lacked the strength to go on, but because I had the wisdom to stop.
Well, folks, we've traveled quite a road through history, and now it's time to meet another founding giant. Standing right alongside George Washington at the dawn of this nation was a man whose fiery words and unshakable principles helped secure our independence. I'm talking about none other than John Adams, our second president. Many of you probably know a few things about John Adams already. He was a key voice pushing for the Declaration of Independence, a real champion of American liberty. He served as our first vice president under Washington, and he was the first president to live in what we now call the White House, though back then it was still unfinished, drafty, and not quite the grand building we know today. Adams was known for his fierce intellect, his stubborn spirit, and his lifelong partnership with Abigail Adams, one of the most remarkable first ladies in our history. Mr. President Adams, the floor is yours.
Greetings, fellow Americans. I am John Adams, the second president of these United States. I was born on October 30th, 1735, in Braintree, Massachusetts, to John Adams Sr. and Susanna Boylston. My early education began at home and at the Braintree Latin School before I enrolled at Harvard College at the age of 16, graduating in 1755. I married my dear Abigail Smith in 1764, and together we raised 6 children, including John Quincy Adams, who would later become our nation's 6th president. Before my presidency, I was a lawyer in Braintree, defending even those British soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre, because I believed in justice and the rule of law. I served as the first vice president under George Washington from 1789 to 1796, before narrowly winning the presidency in 1796, becoming the first to face a true political contest in the new era of party politics. My administration was marked by trying times. I faced international crises, especially the fallout from the Jay Treaty, which angered France and led to the infamous XYZ affair. When French agents demanded bribes to begin negotiations, I refused and prepared the young nation for conflict in what became known as the Quasi-War. It was through these trials that I earned the nickname Father of the American Navy, as we rebuilt our naval forces to protect American interests on the seas. At home, I signed into law the Alien and Sedition Acts in 1798. These laws, while controversial, were intended to safeguard our nation during a time of threat, though I recognize they sparked fierce opposition and debates about civil liberties that have echoed through history. Among my executive actions and proclamations, I took solemn notice of national observances and moments of mourning and thanksgiving, helping shape the traditions that unify our country. I dealt directly with the tensions abroad by cutting ties with the French monarchy after their revolution, prioritizing peace while protecting American sovereignty. Though I was the first president to live in the president's house, what would later be called the White House, it was not quite the stately mansion you know today. It was still unfinished and rather humble, but it was a symbol of the new government's authority. Despite the fierce political battles, including my defeat to Thomas Jefferson in 1800, I remained devoted to the Republic and the rule of law. I kept detailed journals and letters that have helped illuminate the struggles of our early republic. My legacy is intertwined with the very foundation of American democracy. From championing independence to navigating the uncharted waters of a new government, I stood firm in the belief that our young nation must grow strong and just. Thank you for remembering these times and for continuing the work of freedom and justice.
Pauline's Pizza, where we deliver happiness one slice at a time. What's your craving today?
Yeah, hi. Is Seymour there?
Oh, Seymour. I think he might be busy making our special pies. But hey, why not swing by the pizzeria? We've got a pie with your name on it. Anything else I can help you with?
I was looking for Seymour Butts.
Ah, I see. Well, if you're looking for Seymour Butts, he might be hiding behind a pepperoni slice. Anything else I can do for you today?
No, that's it.
Well, John, Mr. President, it's an honor to stand here with you. You were there at the very beginning when this country was only an idea scribbled onto parchment. You helped give that idea life, even when the odds were stacked against you. You defended principles of justice so strong that you even stood up for your enemy's right to a fair trial. And you showed that democracy is about debate, disagreement, and most importantly, finding common ground. I have to say, I admire your determination to build a government that could endure. And you were the first president to move into the White House, even if it wasn't exactly in move-in condition. Thank you, Mr. Adams, for your service, your sacrifice, and your example. Turned slightly as if addressing viewers. Folks, now we look to the man who followed President Adams, the third president of the United States. Allow me to introduce Thomas Jefferson. A lot of people know Jefferson for drafting the Declaration of Independence and making the Louisiana Purchase, but here are a few things you might not know about him. He founded the University of Virginia after he left the presidency. He even designed the buildings himself. He was an avid inventor and created his own version of the swivel chair, which he used while writing. Jefferson had such a passion for books that when the British burned the Library of Congress, he sold his entire personal library, almost 6,500 volumes, to help restart it. President Jefferson, we're honored to hear your story. Please tell us in your own words how you helped shape this nation.
Greetings to you, President Biden, and to all Americans watching in this remarkable age. I am Thomas Jefferson, born on April 13, 1743, in Shadwell, Virginia. When I first walked these hills, the notion that we might one day become a free, united country was a distant dream. Yet, by the grace of Providence and the sacrifice of many, it came to pass. Many know me as the author of the Declaration of Independence, but I also served as our nation's first Secretary of State, second Vice President, and finally, the third President of the United States, from 1801 to 1809. In my youth, I studied at William and Mary, driven by an insatiable hunger for knowledge. Law, philosophy, natural science. I considered all these the birthright of a free mind. I designed my home, Monticello, as a reflection of those Enlightenment ideals. And I later founded the University of Virginia because I believed an educated citizenry was essential to the survival of a republic. When I was president, I took actions that forever changed the shape of this nation. Let me share a few. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803. I authorized the acquisition of a vast territory, doubling the size of the United States. Though some questioned whether the Constitution permitted such a purchase, I believed the opportunity too crucial to pass by. The Lewis and Clark Expedition. I sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark westward to chart the new lands, build relationships with native nations, and map a continent of possibility. Executive orders and proclamations. While the term executive order was not formalized in my time, I issued directives to enforce the Embargo Act of 1807, aimed at keeping us neutral amid Europe's wars, though it also strained our commerce. I proclaimed observances and messages to Congress articulating why liberty could not survive entanglement in foreign intrigues, and I laid the groundwork for respecting religious freedom by ensuring no national faith would ever be imposed. Yet, I was far from perfect. Though I wrote that all men are created equal, I held human beings in bondage. The contradiction haunts my memory. It is a truth each generation must grapple with honestly, for democracy demands conscience as much as conviction. Few realize that I died on the 4th of July, 1826, the very day marking our Declaration's 50th anniversary. And, in a stroke of history's poetry, my old friend and rival John Adams passed just hours later. Some little-known facts you may find curious. I spoke several languages, including Latin, Greek, and French. I was an inventor and an architect. Among my devices was a polygraph machine for duplicating letters. And despite all my achievements,
Well, folks, what can you say after spending time with Thomas Jefferson? We just heard from one of the most influential minds in American history, the man who penned the Declaration of Independence, doubled the size of this country with the Louisiana Purchase, and still found time to build a university. I mean, come on. That's not just a founding father. That's a full-on visionary. But now let's talk about the man who helped bring Jefferson's ideas to life through law and leadership, someone who worked right beside him from the beginning. I want to introduce you to our fourth president, James Madison. You may know Madison as the father of the Constitution and the author of the Bill of Rights. But did you know that James Madison was the smallest president in U.S. history? He stood just 5'4" and weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. But don't let his size fool you. His ideas carried massive weight. So let's take a step deeper into the foundation of our democracy and hear from the brilliant, determined, and often underestimated mind of James Madison. President Madison, the floor is yours.
Greetings, fellow Americans. I am James Madison, the fourth President of the United States, and I thank you for allowing me to share a few reflections on my life and my time in office. I was born on March 16, 1751, the eldest of 12 children, in Orange County, Virginia, where my family built our plantation, Montpelier. Though often in frail health as a boy, I found strength in study and inquiry. My path led me to the College of New Jersey, today known as Princeton University, where I immersed myself in history, law, and philosophy. By the time I was 29, I had the honor of representing Virginia in the Continental Congress, where I first glimpsed the enormous challenge of uniting diverse states under a common purpose. In 1787, as our young nation faltered under the Articles of Confederation, I proposed what became known as the Virginia Plan, a bold blueprint to create a government of separate branches, each held in check by the others. That vision shaped our Constitution, a document whose principles I spent my life defending. Alongside Alexander Hamilton and John Jay, I wrote the Federalist Papers, essays to convince our people that this new framework would preserve both liberty and stability. And as a member of the First Congress, I championed the Bill of Rights, enshrining protections of conscience, speech, and due process. In 1809, I took the oath of office as president, inheriting a nation divided by tensions abroad and factional disputes at home. My administration contended with repeated interference by Britain and France in our trade, culminating in the conflict known as the War of 1812. I declared that war on June 18, 1812, after all peaceful remedies failed. It tested our endurance. British forces burned Washington City. My own wife, Dolly, rescued the portrait of President Washington as the flames neared the White House. But our resilience prevailed. The Treaty of Ghent ended hostilities, and a new sense of American identity emerged. During my presidency, I issued numerous proclamations and messages to guide the nation. In 1810,
Pauline's Pizza, where we deliver happiness one slice at a time. What's your craving today?
Hi, can you tell me about your menu?
Of course. We offer handmade pizzas with different crusts like thin crust, original, or deep dish. We also have fresh salads, pastas, and both bone-in and boneless wings. Would you like to hear about our specialty pies or any current special deals?
Do you have any gluten-free options?
Yes, we do. Our gluten-free crusts are super tasty, but there's a $3 upcharge. Would you like me to go over the options with you?
Great. What's the largest size pizza you offer?
Our largest size is the extra large pizza, perfect for feeding a crowd. Plus, if you upgrade to an extra large, you'll get a free 2-liter soda. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Can I get that gluten-free?
Absolutely. You can get the extra large with a gluten-free crust. What toppings would you like on your pizza?
Do you offer any vegan cheese options?
Yes, we do. Our vegan cheese is delicious and comes with a $3 upcharge. Would you like to add that to your gluten-free pizza?
Yes.
Great choice. So we've got an extra large gluten-free pizza with vegan cheese. Any other toppings you'd like to add?
Well, one moment. What about hosting an event? Do you have any space for a birthday party?
Yes, we do host parties and offer catering. Let me get your email address so I can send over our catering plans. How many people are you planning to invite?
I left my sunglasses there last week. Can you check if they're still there?
I can definitely check for you. Can you describe the sunglasses for me?
They're black with silver frames.
Thanks for the details. I'll have someone check on that for you. Is there anything else I can help with today?
No, that's all for now. I'll call back later. Thanks.
President Madison, it's truly an honor to stand here with you. You've often been called the father of the Constitution, but I know you never stopped believing that the people themselves are the true guardians of democracy. Your defense of the Bill of Rights and your resilience during the War of 1812 remind us all that freedom isn't something we can take for granted. It has to be protected generation after generation. And folks, as we reflect on President Madison's leadership, it's my privilege to introduce the 5th President of the United States, a man who carried forward the ideals of the Revolution and helped define an entire era of American foreign policy. Please join me in welcoming President James Monroe. Before he takes the stage, here's something many people don't know about President Monroe. He was the last U.S. president who was also a founding father, and during the Revolutionary War, he was wounded at the Battle of Trenton, where he actually carried the flag across the battlefield. His courage on that cold December day was the same spirit he later brought to the White House, where he established what became known as the Monroe Doctrine, a statement that told the world America would stand up for the independence of the nations in our hemisphere. President Monroe, the floor is yours.
My fellow Americans, I am James Monroe, and I speak to you not as a figure frozen in marble or memory, but as a man whose life was shaped in the crucible of revolution and devoted to the building of this republic we all cherish. I was born on April 28, 1758, in Westmoreland County, Virginia. My family were modest planters, and like many in our early republic, I found my purpose amid the flames of war. At the age of 18, I left the College of William and Mary to join the fight for our independence. I was wounded at the Battle of Trenton, struck in the shoulder by a musket ball, and nearly lost my life. That pain and sacrifice became part of me, part of the price of liberty. I spent the brutal winter at Valley Forge with General Washington and our brave troops. There, I learned what shared sacrifice truly meant, and how a fragile idea called America could survive against the strongest empire on earth, so long as our hearts were united. After the war, I studied law under the guidance of Thomas Jefferson. He taught me not just the principles of law, but the moral force of democracy. I carried those lessons into my work in the Virginia legislature and as a delegate to the Confederation Congress. Though I supported the Constitution, I also knew the necessity of a Bill of Rights to guard the liberties we had bled for. In the years that followed, I held many offices: Senator, Governor of Virginia, Minister to France. It was in France, during uncertain times, that I helped preserve the very alliance that made our independence possible. And in 1803, I returned there to assist in the Louisiana Purchase. That treaty doubled the size of our nation, opening vast lands to settlers, farmers, and future generations of Americans. During the War of 1812, I served first as Secretary of State, then as Secretary of War. When our Capitol and White House were set ablaze by British hands, I stayed. I would not let our government fall. Then came Missouri. The debate over admitting Missouri to the Union revealed the deep divide between free and slaveholding states. I signed the Missouri Compromise of 1820, allowing Missouri in as a slave state and Maine as free. An uneasy truce, but one that preserved the Union for a time. Perhaps the most lasting legacy of my presidency came in 1823. In my 7th address to Congress, with counsel from Secretary John Quincy Adams, I declared that the Americas were no longer open to European colonization. I warned foreign powers. Any interference in this hemisphere would be seen as a threat to our peace and security. This declaration, now known as the Monroe Doctrine, has guided our nation's foreign policy for 2 centuries. It was not just a message to Europe, it was a message to the world. America would stand for its neighbors and for liberty. During my presidency, we admitted new states: Mississippi, Illinois, Alabama, Maine, and Missouri. We suppressed piracy, strengthened the Navy, banned the international slave trade, and laid the groundwork for infrastructure and commerce. And yes, I was a slaveholder, a fact I cannot deny. But I believed in gradual emancipation and supported the American Colonization Society. I endorsed efforts to resettle freed slaves in Liberia, and today their capital bears my name, Monrovia. When my 2 terms ended, I retired as the last of the Founding Fathers to serve in the office of President. I lived my final years quietly, enduring the loss of my beloved wife, Elizabeth, and the burdens of debt. I passed on July 4th, 1831, Independence Day, like my friends Jefferson and Adams before me. My story is not unique among the founders. It is a story of struggle, service, and imperfection. I made difficult decisions. I upheld principles. I endured loss and stood firm in moments when the nation's soul seemed uncertain. And now, I urge all Americans, hear me. This nation was never meant to be ruled by kings, nor owned by a single party, nor silenced by fear. We are a republic, if we can keep it. Free and fair elections are not a luxury. They are the bedrock of liberty. Your voice is your power. Guard it. Use it. The future of democracy does not rest on any one man. It rests on all of us, together, united in purpose, vigilant in truth, and courageous in action. Now let us listen to what the Senate has to say about the big, beautiful bill. One more chapter in this ever-evolving American story. Until then, I remain your humble servant, James Monroe.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed. Pursuant to the order, 4 February 29, 1960, the hour of 12 noon having arrived, the Senate having been in continuous session since yesterday, the Senate will suspend for a prayer by the Senate chaplain.
Thank you all for being with me. As many of you know, the U.S. House of Representatives recently passed the so-called reconciliation bill by a vote of 215 to 214, a one-vote margin. Every Democrat voted against this bill. Almost every Republican voted for it. In the coming weeks, the U.S. Senate is expected to take the bill up. Let me take this opportunity to tell you what is in this piece of legislation. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, this bill makes the obscenely rich, the oligarchs, even richer, while attacking the most basic needs of working families and the most vulnerable people in our society. This bill provides massive tax breaks to the richest people and largest corporations and pays for them by making gigantic cuts to Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, nutrition, education, and other programs that are life and death for working families, the children, and the elderly. This bill is what Trump economics is all about. If you are rich or a large multinational corporation, if you can make huge campaign contributions, you are entitled to massive tax breaks, and Congress will give you those tax breaks. But if you are working class or poor, and you can't make those large campaign contributions, you are entitled to nothing. You're not entitled to health care through Medicaid. You're not entitled to a nutrition program to feed your kids. You're not entitled to a decent education. Trumpism is about the belief that we live in a dog-eat-dog world where the big dogs are able to eat the little dogs. And that is the way it is. This bill would provide a $664 billion tax break to the top 1% at a time when the top 1% already own more wealth than the bottom 93%. It would provide a $420 billion tax breaks to large multinational corporations that are stashing their profits in offshore tax havens like the Cayman Islands. And by the way, this tax break makes it easier for those companies to invest in robots and artificial intelligence, with the result that they're going to be able to throw workers out on the streets. And how would Trump and the Republicans in Congress pay for these huge tax breaks for the wealthy and large corporations? Well, at a time when over 85 million Americans today are uninsured or underinsured, this bill slashes Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act by more than $715 billion. The Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, has estimated would eliminate health care for 13.7 million Americans. Almost 14 million Americans would lose their health care. Further, at a time when 22% of our seniors are trying to survive on less than $15,000 a year, and I don't know how anybody survives on that, this legislation will make it much harder for seniors to receive the care they desperately need in nursing homes. And here is something else that is really quite shocking. Just this week, Yale University, Pennsylvania, estimated that if this is enacted, over 50,000 Americans will die to mass cuts to Medicaid and for it's not science. People don't have access to care and can't get a doctor when they are sick. Many die unnecessarily. But it's not just our healthcare system that would be devastated by this legislation. While this bill provides massive tax breaks to billionaires, it would cut $290 billion from nutrition programs and would literally literally take food away from more than 2 million children and at least 250,000 low-income seniors. Recently, as you may have seen, on the TV program Meet the Press, Speaker Mike Johnson said that there was a quote-unquote moral component to this bill, a moral component. He was referring to the fact that this bill would require Americans to prove that they are working at least 80 hours a month before receiving Medicaid or food stamps. Let us see how quote-unquote moral that requirement really is. Last year, some 20 million Americans were either laid off or fired by their employers. They lost their jobs. And in our dysfunctional and cruel healthcare system, when you lose your job, you lose your healthcare. And that is what Medicaid is supposed to be all about. It is supposed to be there for those people who need it the most, the people, among others, who lose their jobs. All of us remember what happened during the COVID pandemic. In March and April of 2020, 22 million workers lost their jobs in a 2-month period. 22 million workers. People were lined up for miles at food banks to feed their families. What would have happened to them if they were unable to receive Medicaid or nutrition assistance? How many would have ended up in total desperation? How many would have actually died? Well, maybe you're thinking, that was then, it will never happen again. Well, take a look at what happened when Wall Street crashed the economy. Between October of 2008 and April of 2009, an average of 700,000 Americans lost their jobs every month through no fault of their own. What would have happened to many of those people without Medicaid, food stamps, and other federal assistance? But it's not just COVID and the 2008 recession that we should be thinking about. Consider what will likely be happening to jobs in our country in the very near future. Just last week, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, one of the world's most powerful creators of artificial intelligence, predicted that AI, quote, could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. And let me repeat, the head of one of the most powerful AI companies in the world is telling half of all entry-level white-collar jobs to be eliminated as a result of AI. And many jobs will be eliminated in robots. Don't forget, Medicaid is health insurance for individual Americans. It is a major source of funding for nursing homes throughout our country. Are my Republican friends going to suggest that seniors and people with severe disabilities work 80 hours a month before they can get Medicaid to pay for their nursing home coverage? Is that what they're thinking? And let me get back for a moment to the so-called issue. Be active and organized. But I've read the Bible. And this is what Jesus said, and I quote, "For I was hungry, and you gave something, thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you gave me clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me." And friends, it's reality all about. I hope that my colleagues in this, those who claim to be religious, remember that very powerful passage. Let's be frank. In no religion, Judaism is Buddhism, or any other, is it considered moral to enrich those who need it the least while taking basic necessities, food, healthcare, away from the desperate people who need it the most? Together, we can and must defeat this terrible legislation. Thank you.
This is email and do something. These executive orders is outrageous. We need to go ahead and figure out where the shredder is at. So we ain't got Ninja Turtles. We ain't got the FBI. We don't have the CIA. We don't have none of those 3 or 4 letters. All we have is a bird watcher and a person who wants change to happen. If you like change, help, come join, keep watch.
My fellow Americans, today we remember and honor the leaders who helped shape this great nation, the first 5 presidents of the United States. Each of them, in their own way, laid down the foundation for the democracy we cherish today. George Washington, our first president, set the precedent that no one is above the law, not even a king. He willingly gave up power after 2 terms, proving that leadership in America is a trust from the people, not a throne to be inherited or seized. John Adams, our second president, was a fierce defender of liberty and the rule of law. He helped steer us through the turbulent waters of revolution and build the institutions that protect our rights today. Thomas Jefferson, the third president, gave us the powerful words of the Declaration of Independence, affirming that all people are created equal with certain unalienable rights. His vision of a nation built on freedom and opportunity still guides us. James Madison, the fourth president, is known as the father of the Constitution. He helped design a government strong enough to protect us, but limited enough to respect our freedoms. He ensured the framework that keeps our democracy vibrant and balanced. And James Monroe, our fifth president, gave us the Monroe Doctrine, a bold statement that the Americas would be free from foreign domination. He championed national unity during the era of good feeling, reminding us that together we are stronger. These 5 men rejected monarchy and tyranny. They insisted that power must come from the people through free and fair elections. That is the promise of America. Government by the people, for the people. Today, that promise depends on all of us. It depends on us protecting the integrity of our elections, making sure every voice is heard and every vote counted, because democracy only works if it is honest and open. And
Hi, I'm Terrence, a marketing professional with a passion for helping your business grow smarter and faster. Here at DaBomb Digital Media, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia, we specialize in bringing your vision to life. Whether you're launching your first website or reimagining your entire digital presence, we've got you covered. From modern website design and search engine optimization to setting up your own AI-powered agency tools, we deliver innovative solutions that keep you ahead of the curve. Ready to unlock your business's full potential? Let's build something remarkable together. For more information, visit our YouTube channel. Just search DaBomb Digital Media on YouTube and start exploring tips, success stories, and everything you need to elevate your brand.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's deep dive into the big, beautiful bill. Every debate, every amendment, every promise, and every contradiction laid bare. But this story isn't over. Because in America, democracy isn't a chapter we finish. It's the book we keep writing together. Until next time, remember this. We live for democracy. We die for democracy. Stay diligent in the face of 1,000 pages and find the truth buried in a pile of lies. To be continued.